Okay, so welcome everybody and welcome our viewers on Torah and Time throughout the world. So we're going to begin on Daf Lamed Hey in Brachas, Keitza Mevorchen. That's a new parak that was started several days ago. It's a 6th parak of Brachas, Keitza Mevorchen, ala Paris. How do you make a bracha on Paris? And what's a necessary formula, what's a necessary text for a bracha on fruit? Keitza Mevorchen. So I just want to, as a little introduction, I just want to point out the severity of making a bracha. I think that especially in today's society, we're very frum, we're very religious, but we're not so spiritual. And of course, being religious is very important, but it shouldn't diminish from being a ruchnius, a spiritual-centered person, to always have an awareness of Hashem. And whatever a person is engaged in, that they should acknowledge and recognize God's presence in their life. So I think personally, and I don't mean to be controversial, but on the other hand, I think it's important to say that there's a lack of emphasis on making brachas. As important it is to learn Gemara, and as integral and critical it is to perform mitzvahs, reciting brachas, I think, is a direct correlation, if you want to know the litmus test, the barometer, to analyze and assess someone's connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God, is how they recite their brachas. Do they recite brachas? You'd be shocked. There are many yeshiva graduates that went through the system that if you monitor them throughout the day, you have this nanny cam, right, or one of these devices, you'll see, and it's tragic, that they get into the rote and habit of not even making brachas. And a bracha is basically an acknowledgement that there's a master of the world, that I'm not able to just function on my own wherewithal. So I believe that there's Eibishter. How do you show you believe there's Eibishter? When you eat something, you say, Rebbeinu Shalom, God Almighty, I have to have permission. I have to ask you. This is yours. I don't have entitlement. So the Sefer Hasidim, Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, in Siman Mem Vav, he speaks about a person. He says, a person had a premature demise. A person died early. Kamashonim. In other words, that he died at a very early age. And after 12 months is the time when the neshama is done, his neshama is judged. After 12 months, he appeared to his relative. I'm not sure, but I don't think that Rabbi Yehuda Chassid divulges precisely who the relative was. Was it his mother-in-law? Was it his spouse? If he had a spouse, who did he reveal himself to? But the neshama of this person, this man that died early, Rachmana litzlan, he revealed himself to someone in his family, and he told him that every day of the year he was being judged. Gehenna. Why? Not for Chilul Shabbos. Maybe he was Shomer Shabbos in entirety. Not even for Lashon Hara. Why was he being judged every day? Al shalei dikdik levarich, because he didn't make brachas appropriately. Imagine that. Rabbi Yehuda Chassid is not writing this just to chronicle, just to tell, some kind of fairy tale story, chas v'sholem, or just to give entertainment. Rabbi Yehuda Chassid is telling us, he says, you don't want to go to Gehenna? This person came back to tell you how to conduct your life. Make sure to be very vigilant and to be steadfast in making brachas. As a matter of fact, Rabbeinu Bechaya, in his Kara Kemach, he says, Yesh al adam chayva atzuma. It means a person has a very weighty, an exceedingly critical task. As a Jew, he says that a person should be nizhar in brachas. And he says that if a person makes brachas the way he should make brachas, it's a testimony on the person that his Yiddishkeit has shoyrush v'ikr, that his Yiddishkeit is a real Yiddishkeit. That's not a falshkeit. That's not a falsehood. Imagine that. By making a bracha. Baruch. I had an uncle. It's my father's uncle. But he was very close to us. So I considered him, even though he was a great uncle, I considered him been my uncle also. He's a big tzaddik. He was the private shliach sibur for the Kloisenbergers Zatzal. The tzaddik Yisrael and the Kloisenberger. So when my uncle made a bracha, it was a whole avoda. His mom was, he was transplanted to a different sphere. And you could see the slavos, the fiery passion. And it took him a very long time. By the time he made his bracha, the ice cream melted, the soup got cold. But he was somebody that was so grateful for everything. When he came to visit us, he wouldn't trust, not that he didn't trust my mother, but he had his own shechita. So he came with his own, his own chickens. They used to run around. No, they were already dead. It was like, what is that? Baruch. It was a whole wow. I think about it very often, his bracha. But he says, the Rabbeinu B'chai is saying that if you want to know a person's Yiddishkeit, Shoyrish V'ikr, the basis for his Yiddishkeit, it's on his bracha. V'uchasav v'yorichet, and it shows you who's pious and who taka has Yerushalayim. As a matter of fact, the Ritva in his Akdama to brachas, the Hilchos brachas, he says that if a person focuses on making a bracha, so it's Moshe Chen v'chesed, grace and kindness on the person. And he says, if he doesn't make a bracha with focus and concentration, he's parik ol. It's as if he, Rachmal Islam, it's as if he severed his identity with Rabban Shalom, with God. Imagine that. As a matter of Shach, this is not Reb Shapsi Cohen, this is a famous Shach that was in the time of the contemporary of the Arizal, who has fascinating Kabbalistic insights into the Chumash. It's quoted very often by many Svarim. So he says that a person that is not nizar in brachas, so when he dies, he says that he's going to have a very painful decomposition, disintegration, deterioration. In other words, his corpse, when it decomposes and disintegrates, he says, Masha Enkim, whereas when a person who's very nizar in brachas, he says that the worms will not, the maggots, the worms will not have any shlita, will not have any jurisdiction over his corpse, over his cadaver, over his body. Can you imagine that? So I thought it was very important to mention these things, and that a person starting tonight, whatever bracha you're going to make tomorrow morning, a bracha should be said out loud. As they're saying in Yiddish, hoich klor, should be said out loud and clear. That's how we should make a bracha. It's brought down in the Sfarim HaKadoshim that a house where brachas, and this is if you have family members, whether they're children, siblings, whatever it is, should tell them that in the home they should make a bracha out loud. And they should pause and reflect for one moment. And they said a house where a bracha is made with fervor, that house will not have hezek, won't have damage. It will have shmirah. So kedai to try. Brachatoy minaharitz, that's what it sounds like. It's terrible the way most people make brachas. From people. So Keitzim Avorchen, how do you make a bracha? Now you know how to make a bracha. The Mishnah says Keitzim Avorchen, now we know how to make a bracha. Got to make a bracha with kavanah, with focus. Okay, so the Mishnah continues on Daf Lamed Hey in the Mishnah. Keitzim Avorchen al Paris, how do you make a bracha on fruit? Al Paris Elon, on fruit from the tree. Hoimer Barei Priya Eitz. He created fruit on the tree. Chutz min yayin. Yayin has its own context. Yayin has its own. It's a higher caliber fruit. It's on the vine. It's blessed by Hashem. It's more prestigious. And it's more preeminent, so to speak. So yayin oimer Barei Priya Geffen. He makes a different bracha on yayin. It's the exception in the world of the fruits. Val Paris Aretz. And on fruit from the earth, Hoimer Barei Priya Adama. And the only exception is chutz min apas, on bread, even though it comes from the earth as well. It's grain, comes from the earth. We say hamoitzi lechem. So alapas hoimer hamoitzi lechem aretz. The sheet of the chachamim, right in the Tana in the Mishnah is hamoitzi lechem aretz. They say hamoitzi lechem aretz. He that brought forth moitzi lechem. He that brought forth bread from the ground. Okay, let's go weiter. Let's see now, based on this Mishnah. Let's see the Gemara on Daf Lamed Lamed Chesam and Aleph. Okay, so Lamed Chesam and Aleph, we're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 lines from the bottom. Moshe, let me know when you have it. 10 lines from the bottom, Lamed Chesam and Aleph. famous Gemara. I'm sorry, it's around 11 lines from the bottom by the 2 dots. The headline is Shala Pasu Aimer Hamaitzi V'chulu, etc. Starts Taf Reish, Tanu Rabbanan. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Mahu Aimer Hamaitzi Lechem in Aretz. Rabbi Nechemia Aimer Maitzi Lechem in Aretz. Rabbi Nechemia says the proper formulation would be Maitzi Lechem in Aretz, because Maitzi means he brought forth Lechem in Aretz. He brought forth bread from its Lashon Avar, past, right? That he brought forth Lechem in Aretz. Amar Rava, so Rava says, "Maitzi kli amalei pligi ta'apik mashma." Maitzi, everybody knows that it means Lashon Avar, that the past that he brought forth, he let it to sprout and to flourish, to grow, to germinate. T'chsiv, because the pasuk says, he brings a pasuk from Sefer Bamidbar, Kel Maitziyim in Mitzrayim. The Rebbeinu Shalom brought them forth from Mitzrayim, that he did the Exodus. It means that Lashon Avar. In the past, he extracted them. He brought them out from Egypt. Ki pligi, when's there a machlokes tanoim? B'hamaitzi. In regards to hamaitzi, what does hamaitzi mean? Rabbanan savri hamaitzi da'apik mashma. Rabbanan tell us that it means that Rebbeinu Shalom brought it forth. That hamaitzi also means it's the same grammar, that it means the same syntax, that it means that he brought forth. Now, how do you know? Because Rabban Shalom brought you forth from Sefer Devarim the water from the flintstone. Rabbi Nechemia Savar Hamaitzi Demapik Mashma. No, he says that Hamaitzi implies, and that you could Hamaitzi means that Demapik means that it's talking about it will happen. So the pasuk says in Shemai, Sefer Shemai, Hamaitzi Eschem Mitachas Silvus Mitzrayim, to referring to the fact that Rabban Shalom will take us out of the subjugation, out of the travail of Mitzrayim. So you see, you have a machlokes tanom over here. What the right lashon should be hamaitzi or maitzi. Now, the Gemara ends up saying on Lamed Ches Amud Beis. You go to the top of Lamed Ches Amud Beis, that the third line, second to last word in the line, the third line, second to last word in the line, v'hilchasa, the halacha is, we say that what? Hamaitzi. Halacha is, you say hamaitzi, lechem in aretz. The kaimelan k'rabbanan, we pass like k'rabbanan, the amri, the apik mashma, means that it's referring to the past. Okay. The fact is that the Maharal, it's a famous Maharal, in the Siv Avoda Perek Yud Zayin, Maharal is a little troubled. He says because Lamaisa, practically speaking, the implication, the meaning behind Hamaitzi, it seems to have a perhaps dual meaning, because it can mean that it happened, but it sounds like that it will happen. So he wants a shtustel, a Gemara from Shabbos Daf Lamed Amud Beis. A famous Gemara there as well. Asida Eretz Yisrael shetoitzi gluskois v'kli milas. That the Rebbeinu Shalom gives a haftacha, a promise from the future times in Ikvus the Mashiach, the Achros Yamim, that in the times of Mashiach, really, that the Rebbeinu Shalom will bring forth from the ground bread. That bread will grow from the ground, and also clothing will grow from the ground. Flax, so we don't have to comb flax, you don't have to take flax from the earth. You'll actually be able to extract clothing that will be growing. Imagine you want a sweater, you want a suit, you don't have to go to Emporio, you don't have to go, that wasn't an advertising for Emporio, you don't have to go whatever store, whatever the store you go to, you don't have to go there, just go ahead and you pluck it from the ground. It's an amazing thing, it's a mamash anais. You see today that it's happening with genetic engineering and with bioengineering and in the field of horticulture and botany. It's amazing what the technological advances in agriculture. It's truly, truly fascinating. So the Maharal says that when you say Hamaitzi lechem aretz, to tell you his lashon, he says that Chet Adam Harishon Gorim Lezeh She'eni Yotzei Muchan Mishalim. He says really before the Chet Adam Harishon, so that's how it was. You didn't take grain from the ground. You took a shtik bright. You took a piece of bread. That's what you took. Imagine that. But Adam was makalkel. Adam ruined the earth. And therefore, it has to now go through a whole procedure and process in order to be able to, you have to take the grain, you have to pulverize, you have to, crush it, then you have to go ahead and mix it with water and knead it. It's a whole lengthy process. He says, but Lamaisa, practically speaking, when we say the bracha, Hamoitzi Lechem Haaretz, it's also a silent tefillah that Be'ez Hashem Yisparach, very, very soon, in the time of Mashiach, we will be able to be Moitzi Lechem Haaretz. So he says that's the mashmos. So yeah, it means Moitzi Lechem Haaretz, that you brought, that Rabban Shalom gave you in the past, but it's also a dual meaning, a dialectical, the dialectical, I guess, inference over here from the word. Imagine that. So Moitzi, that's why you say, don't say Moitzi, you say Ha Moitzi, like the Chazal, like the Tanakama. Okay, now, it happens to be that Tosfos, in the top Tosfos, very interesting Tosfos, Yesodistic Tosfos, that a lot of halacha is based on, is on Lamed Chesma, based of top Tosfos for Hilchas al Moitzi, is the Dibra Masul. Okay, so he says that's the Gemara says that Moitzi, l'chayra Moitzi, there's more of a consensus on. Moitzi is more universal, and it's less confounding, less confusing. That Moitzi means that the Rebbeinu Shalom brought it forth, right? And you're enjoying it now, okay? So Moitzi, really, if you had to nominate the right one without looking at the Chachamim, their Shita, Reb Nechemia is right. You say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Moitzi Lechem and Aretz. Yerushalmi Farish Taima, he says Yerushalmi explains the reason why the halacha is like the Chachamim, not the halacha is like Rabbi Nechemia, is Kedei Shaloi La'arev Ha'isiyos Kegoyin Ha'olam Moitzi. He says in order not to obfuscate the bracha, the Oisiyos. Why? Because you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam Moitzi, so you have the two adjoining mems, the juxtaposed mamish. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam Moitzi. So therefore you're going to swallow one of the letters, and you're not going to articulate it. You're not going to pronounce it the way it should be pronounced. Or bazoi, it's much better to say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Ha Moitzi with a hey instead of a mem. Okay, it's fragtaisus. Good. It's Taisus. Right, so he says that the alpha gabdu lechem min nami right Moitzi Ha Moitzi lechem min here. Ashi here Ha Moitzi lechem min. So you have the mems, lechem min. So there you'll swallow one of the. So he says, Ika Eruv also. You have the Eruv, you have the problem that it's going to become, again, obfuscated. Shiny Hasam. It's different over there. Dekruxiv. Because this is based on a pasuk. This is built upon a pasuk until Kufdalid Matzmiach Chotzer Lebeima Ve'esal Avodas Adam Laitzi Lechem Naretz. Oh, so he says that since it's based on a pasuk, Moitzi lechem min haaretz, therefore it stays the way it is because it's predicated on something holy, on the pasuk from Tillim. Therefore, it's a yotzim and a klal. It's an exception. You have to be careful. Yeah, in fact, therefore the Mishnah Berurah, the halacha says. Therefore, a person has to be careful. Most people are not cognizant. Most people are not aware. They say Moitzi lechem min haaretz. He would say Hamoitzi lechem. You have to stop. You have to support. That's how the poskim say this. Not me creating this. Hamoitzi lechem min haaretz. Mini Horowitz, it sounds like. You say it quickly. Brokatoy Mini Horowitz. That's what it sounds like. Mini Horowitz. No, it's not Mini Horowitz. Not a lady Mini Horowitz. Franny Horowitz. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Blessed are you, Elokeinu, our God, Melech Haolam, Master of the universe. Okay, the person can go into it if I forget, let's say Melech, or if I forgot Elokeinu. A lot of interesting halachas about that. We're not going to get into it now. But min haaretz. Okay, now he says, Valkain yesh lepsaya b'shtei yadav be'eser etzbais neged yud tevish mikrazeh. Okay, there are 10 words in the pasuk. There are also 10 words. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Ha Moitzi Lechem min haaretz. 10 words in the bracha. It's interesting that Tosfos doesn't reference the bracha itself. You say the bracha itself has 10, and also Einei Chol Elecha Yasaberu. Atah noisen lahem esachlam beitoy. The Rishonim will point out that also our eyes are to the Rabban Shalom. You give us lechem beitoy, bread in its time. That pasuk from Tillim also has, right, it's ayin of Ashrei, right before Posech Hasidecha, also has 10 words in it. So it's very, very deep. Al Pi Kabbalah, they'd say that the 10 you're supposed to when you pick up the bread, and the Piskei Teshuvos brings down, even if you don't have a bread. Even if it's a shtick, even if it's a slice of bread, which most people are not nizer in, but that's what he brings down. That even if it's just a slice of bread, you make the bracha, you should envelop it with your hands. It's brought down al pi Kabbalah. I think the 2 thumbs are supposed to be on the bottom and the rest of the fingers on top. Most people don't do that. It's al pi Kabbalah. But it's also brought down that all the mitzvahs that are more agricultural, that have to do with the grains and the land, and moitzi, there's 10 mitzvahs. 10 mitzvahs midoraisa. So this is what you're supposed to have in mind. Again, most people, you're lucky if they have in mind just to make the bracha with a shtickle, with some kavana, some form of kavana, Halavai, they should have in mind, okay, the Esser spheres, it's brought out Kabbalah that the 10 words in the bracha and putting the 10 fingers on the bread represent the 10 spheres, the 10 emanations, and the 10 mitzvahs that are associated with bread. But these are all something very important to have in mind that the poskim will speak about. To have, the 10, to envelop the bread, and to also, by the way, to hold in your right hand. A lot of people don't do that either. You're supposed to hold in your right hand and focus on it. And but again, if you're having your fingers on it, so your left hand is also involved. Okay, that's Tosfos. Okay.
Yes, now I'm doing the right thing.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Good. Okay, now.
You have 10 different halachas have to do with bread too, like with Truma and Meiser and...
Right, exactly. 10 different halachas, yeah, precisely. Very good, yeah. Okay, let's go weiter. Let's go now to Lamed Tes on the Beis. There's so much to cover, so many different sugyas here, so many halachas. But let's go to Lamed Tes on the Beis. 3rd line from the bottom, 5th word off the line. Rav Ami Rav Asi. Rav Ami Rav Asi, ki avi misramilu rifta de ruva. When they were involved in the Erev Chatzeros, right? The Erev Chatzeros is in order to be able to, for 2 courtyards or 2 homes in a public rishus, to join them together so that they could carry from one confine to the other. So they make an Erev Chatzeros. So they use, let's say, bread or matzah in order to do this. So he says that after they had the bread for the Erev, they would make sure to use that bread and to make a bracha hamoitzi on the bread. So Rashi says, look at the last Rashi, there's a diuk in the last Rashi. Rashi says, Rifta de Ruva, Sha'arva by Esmal Eruva Chatzeres. That yesterday, the day before, they used it for the Erev Chatzeres. And as Mashmois from Rashi is, that the day that they made the Erev Chatzeres, you wouldn't actually use it for because you want the Erev to be intact. So l'chayr, this is talking about, let's say, Motzei Shabbos. The other Rishonim seems to be that the chaylik on exactly when you're using the Erev and when you're making the bracha on it. But this is, Rashi seems to be, the Mashmois from Rashi is pashtus, that you're talking, let's say, a case of, let's say, it's Motzei Shabbos or Sunday, and the Erev was used the day before. Okay, so the Gemara says that Amri, who was said, Hoyel v'sa'abe mitzvah chada, that since you made one mitzvah, since you used this for one mitzvah, the Erev Chatzeres, therefore, then Navid Bey mitzvah achrita, you should use it for another mitzvah. So the other mitzvah that they're using for, instead of throwing it out, they're recycling the mitzvah, and they're now saying a bracha moitzalach menaretz, having a suda with it. Now, suda's mitzvah, stam suda. So you see from here, the Meiri says, it's a very Zeir Bavusta Meiri, famous Meiri, where he says that this may be the makor for recycling mitzvahs, that we don't just dispose of a mitzvah. Pashtus, a mitzvah that has, for example, let's say Tashmish mitzvah, something that was used for a mitzvah. For example, talis. So it's not Tashmishi Kedusha, Tashmishi mitzvah. It doesn't have the Shem Hashem in it, doesn't have the name of the Rebbe Hashem in it. It was used for a mitzvah. Schach. Right, many different such examples. So, technically speaking, Me'ikar Adin, you're allowed to just dispose of it. But it's not supposed to have, you're not supposed to mavaz it, you're not supposed to embarrass it. Okay? So what do you do with it? So let's say you could dispose of it in a more distinguished way. In a more, like if you want to put it, like I told somebody recently, okay, the Emma says we had it over here. don't know if anybody saw it, but one morning I come in here, and there's a bag with 2 yellow talisos. So obviously these are old talisos, and I have no idea who dropped it off. No idea who dropped it off. And I mean, it's not, you can't, it's not, listen, the Pasuk said in the last 6 parshas, Zek Helev Aveyu, Hasnal Lefanav b'mitzvahs. A mitzvah you're supposed to embellish and adorn. You're supposed to, a mitzvah you're supposed to do with, it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be, decorated. It's supposed to be nice, So you're going to use that in the shul, the talisos like that. It's old. So I know it's a big mystery. First of all, how the person got in there. Obviously, the person knew the combination. How did they know the combination? How did they get in there? And what are we supposed to do with it now? It doesn't need Geniza, it doesn't need Sheamus, But on the other hand, so you put it, technically speaking, Mikradin, you let it put in a bag and then put into recycling. The recycling, there's no food in there. Hopefully there's no, let's say, refuse, real refuse. So the funny thing is, later that day, I banged into somebody. And he says to me, I have a shiloh. My wife found these 2 talisos in a bag. I said, 1 second. I said, it was in BGX this morning. He says, really? She put it there? I asked him, how does she know how to get in there? I said, I don't know. It was the same person. It must have had to be. I mean, it couldn't have been anybody.
What about after Sukkot when people eat esrog and they said a bracha on that?
Right, but that's a Miri. That's the concept over here. So he says, so it's very interesting. The 2 examples that he gives, the Meiri gives, are, what are the 2 examples that he gives? He says, Hadassim, on Sukkot, to use it for Besama Matzah Shabbos, for Havdalah, for the fragrance. And then he gives another example. His other example is, I think I wrote it down here. So he doesn't say that. He says,
what about the rubbers
he says, the Psilois de Shabbos, the wicks of Shabbos, to use it for the Havdalah candle. It's interesting because you have to braid it a little. I mean, the wicks of Shabbos are not braided. It's interesting. I thought it was a chiddush that he said that. Because also, is that a malacha to braid it? Usually some people are makbid not to do any malacha unless they say Baruch HaMavdil, before. And then I guess it extinguishes and it's for fallen.
What do you mean by the wicks of Shabbos?
The what?
What are you using? In oil?
Yeah.
Havdalah.
Now the other Rishonim bring down the lulav, that you do streifus bir chametz with the lulav. The others also bring down pumfakert. It's brought down from, I think the Maril says, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Maril. Marivile. I think the Marivile says that you should take the lulav and use it for afiyas matzah in the oven, to heat up the oven with the lulav. Most of us don't do that. We use a taka. A lot of us do. Let's say for the, but this is the makor. This may be the makor. This gemara, the Rav Amir Vasi that they used for the erev chatzers, that they made sure to make a bracha on it afterwards to recycle a mitzvah. It's very important to recycle a mitzvah. It's brought down that the afikaiman. It's brought down al pi Kabbalah, and the poskim mentioned it that the afikaiman you should to hang up the afikaiman. I don't know how anybody. I don't understand it because who has anything left from the afikaiman? I never understood this. How did they have something left? They used to do this. They used to hang it up. And also it shows you that there must have been pita bread. You can't bang in a matzah. How do you bang in a nail in a matzah? How do you hang it up? What are you going to hang it up on? So they must. What?
You frame it?
Frame it. I sure. Kenzain, what?
Everybody had their own.
They had their own matzahs.
People use.
Or if they had their own matzahs, they had their own afrika. Okay, Kenzain. I don't know. But it's brought down that it's taka for a shmira. I had a Maisha Shoya. I think I once told you that.
People use matzah for an erev.
For erev, yeah, right. But I told somebody that Afikaiman, somebody told me that they were having car incidences with the car. They're getting to different accidents, and so I told the person, I said, it's brought down, Taka, that Afikaiman is a shmira. And a lot of families, what they do is they keep it in their china closet, keep a piece of them for Afikaiman. So I told the person, I recommended to the person to put in his glove compartment a piece of Afikaiman. And he told me that the next time he was in a very bad accident, and miraculously he didn't get hurt, and the car survived and everything. And he's sure, he said it never happened like that before. He was always totaled. Anytime he got into an accident, his car was. So this guy has some kind of mazel. He says there's the afikaiman. So it's kedai to. But so that's part of recycling the mitzvahs. Now if you look a little weiter in the Gemara says on Daf Mem and Amar Aleph. And Gemara says, Omar Rav, Now Rav said, "Haboitzeya." This is referring to the boitzeya, the person who's making the bracha on hamoitzi for everybody. He's cutting the bread. The boitzeya literally means cutting the bread. So Amar Rav, tul baruch, tul baruch. So if he says, take the baruch means the thing that was gebenched, the moitzi that had the blessing on it. That means tul baruch, tul baruch. Einit tzarich levarich. So you don't have to make a bracha again. It's not considered to be hefsek. In other words, that the guy is distributing the moitzi, and he says, take it. It's considered to be part and parcel of the bracha. It's not considered to be a hefsek. It's not considered to be an interruption. All right? So, everybody, no. When it comes to, after we wash, I call after we wash, there's no gossip hour. Because everybody's forced, and the funny thing is that, the person who goes ahead, who's the mavarich, he's the boitzeya. So he could go ahead, he makes the moitzi, he's not supposed to be mafsik too long. He's supposed to eat right away the bread, and then he gives it out. But before he gives it out, in the meantime, he could hold everybody hostage and captive, and he could say whatever he wants. They can't talk yet, and he could give everybody musar and teichacha, But it's interesting because tul varach, you see that every time it speaks, it gives an example. Later on, it gives an example of Gevil Turi, it always repeats it twice. So Rishonim say that the reason why it says tul baruch, could have just said one example, tul baruch. Why does it say tul baruch? If somebody's a little, neurotic over here, they say tul baruch. He said, no, to show you that even if a person, let's say by us, so it happened to me a few times. So they didn't have the melech, the salt wasn't on the table. So how to be mafsik, but it's not a hefsik. Say melech. So I had one person at my table who was a little shtickle Israeli, not religious. And he says, and it seems I didn't pronounce. He says, why is he asking for the king? Who's the king? No, not melech. Melech. It was very funny. He's asking for the king. Anyhow, so. But tul baruch is the emphasis. The Rishonim explained. The emphasis is that even if he says it twice, he could say it once. Genug, shine. Even if he says it twice, it's still not a hefsek. He said because that's Dibra Torah. That's not Dibra Torah. The Lashon B'nei Adam. That the normala. This is the normal. This is how we conduct ourselves. That we say things more than once, right? Okay. So he says that haba melech, haba lifton. If he says, bring the melech, bring the lifton, let's say the lifton is the condiment or the dips, yeah, we need salt, we need lifton. So the first time the Gemara says, tzarich levarich. Then if you said that, you have to make the bracha again. You were mafsik. So you have to maybe wash again. You have to make hamoitzi again. It's a whole shiloh. What do you have to do? That's the first shita. Rabbi Yitzchok, have you melech, have you lifton? Nami ain't tzarich levarich. Rabbi Yitzchok doesn't pass like that. We pass on Rabbi Yochanan that if he says bring the salt, if he says bring whatever you have to need, whatever it's tzarich tzuda, whatever you need is part of tzuda, we pass on Rabbi Yochanan. Not like the sheet of the Chachamim there that he says ein tzarich levarich. You don't have to. Pasha, yeah. So interesting is that
we do that on every month like this.
Well, he says that. I just want to point out Rashi. If you look at Rashi, it's the second Rashi on the Amud. Haviu melech nami ein tzarich levarich. That you don't have to make it a bracha. Shapsu tzarich bracha, because this is part of the bracha. It's a mainstay of the bracha. In other words, it's a factor in the bracha. Shetei prusa shel bracha nechelos betam. That the prusa of the bracha, that otherwise it would be felt epis. In other words, it would be a bezoyan to the bracha, that the prusa of the bracha, that the bread that you're using for the bracha, that it doesn't have tam, that doesn't have the necessary salt or the condiment that you need. Yeah, now that's what he says. Okay, now there's a fascinating Tosfos over here. Famous.
Condiments as well, or just salt?
Right. So, by the way, so we'll discuss whether let's say you're allowed to have sugar in this. If you don't have salt, you're allowed to have sugar. So many Achronim bring down that sugar, it's okay. When they say that, let's say on Rosh Hashanah, sugar is a substitute, even though the Arizal was makbid. By the way, the Arizal was makbid, even in Rosh Hashanah, that not to dispense with the salt. That salt is integral and it's mamish indispensable. What? He had both. Yeah, both. But other Achronim say that salt could be substituted by the sugar, because if you hold, there's a whole machlokes why we need salt at the table and whether we need it at all. You see that there's a shita that holds that bichlal, it's only if you need it, only if the bread is lacking in taste. But our bread is very refined, and our bread is very tasty. We have mamash extract challah. Challah is very delicious. So you don't need it. So why do we maintain it? Pashtus, it's no longer necessary. Yeah, you don't need salt anymore. So Mishnah Berurah though says, nevertheless, he says you should still have salt on the table. And we'll see why. We're going to get to a shita of Rabbi Menachem. Not very often in Shas does Tosfos quote a shita of Rabbi Menachem. It's a rarity. But in this Tosfos actually quotes a Rabbi Menachem, shita of Rabbi Menachem, a Bal Tosfos that doesn't come up very often. So let's see Tosfos, the top Tosfos Daf Mem. He says the Havi Hesach Hadas. He says that the first mandoma, the shita. Not Rabbi Yochanan, the other shita holds that Havi, the first top Tosfos on the left column, you see in the very top, over there, yeah, Tosfos. You have it, Moshe, you have it? Yeah, that one, yeah. The Havi Hesach Hadas. It's because now you become absent. It's a break. You said something that wasn't nogea to the bracha. The Gemara Menachos says, Daf Lamed Vav, Sach bein tefillin. If a person speaks between the tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh, between the two tefillin, right? Are you allowed to do that? No, it's a big sin. So it's considered to be a big sin to do that. All right, Sarach Levarich. Even if you hold a separate mitzvah, right? I think so. Yeah, it happened to me today. Actually, I saw somebody. I was visiting I wasn't there for a long time, and my whole schedule got changed this morning because I had a little shtickle emergency with somebody, whatever. So I go somewhere, I didn't see a person in a long time, and I didn't realize he's putting on his, I didn't realize, I didn't see his shalyah was on, I said, oh, he almost was mopsing. I said, no, don't say anything, But l'chara, even those that hold, Sach bein tefillin. So he says that, Sarach Levarich, he says then you have to make a new bracha. What bracha do you have to make, by the way? Remember, there's machlokes between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah about do you have to make one or two brachas when you put on tefillin. We pass like the Ramah that we make two brachas. We say lo niach tefillin and we say al mitzvahs tefillin. The Shulchan Aruch holds you only make one bracha. So what's that? Shvalos Tosfos, right? It's interesting. It's the reverse. Yeah, one of those exceptions. So l'chara, if you went ahead, like the Ramah, if you went ahead and you were mafsik, so on the Shel Rosh, you have to say, you have to say two brachas. And the Mechaber, like the Mechaber, so if you're mafsik bein tefillin Shel Yad, so the tefillin Shel Rosh, you'd have to repeat the l'niach tefillin. I think that's the cheshbon. If I'm not mistaken. So he says, "V'chein halacha imsach bein birchas hamoitzi." I'm sorry.
He has a right that even if it's a machlokes,
the machmir to make him a bracha. Yeah. Right. Very interesting. Right. That's a good chiddush. Yashkarach. Yeah. He says that v'chein halacha imsach bein birchas hamoitzi la'achila. Right. If I'm mafsik between I made the moitzi, and then I say something that's not germane to the meal, that's not relevant to the meal. All right. Ubein birchas kiddush l'shtiyah, also between kiddush and drinking. Sarach lachzul levarich, have to make another bracha. Ilav milsa t'shchil l'sudav, unless it's something that's necessary for the meal. K'may tul baruch, like the Gemara gave the example of tul baruch. Right, come have your bread. V'chein b'shchita, and also by shchita. Sarach lachzul levarich, ilav mimilsa shchita. If you shecht an animal, and you realize, that you were mafsik, you said something that wasn't related to the shchita at all, then you have to go ahead and say the bracha of shchita again. Kamoi, for example, if he says, "Ha'oid yoser behemus v'tarnagol mishchait," are there more animals or birds, to shecht? Or sheyoma achuz heitiv, hold on tight, shal yishmat. In those cases where you're speaking about the animals, then there's not considered to be a hefsek. You're asking for more animals, you're instructing the guy how to do the shechita, that's okay. So Tosfos shita is, the first shita that he says, is that you don't need melech on your table, you don't need salt on your table. Salt-free diet. It's no sodium. Why? He says, because our bread is fine. We don't have a problem. We don't have to spruce up the bread. You don't have to make it more appetizing and delectable. It's no problem. She says that the Gemara says, famous Gemara later on, he says that you don't have to do it. There's nothing wrong with the bread. Miu, Rabbi Menachem Hoy Medaktik. Listen to Shita Rabbi Menachem. Yeah, fascinating. What a chiddush. Listen to this. Yeah, so interesting. So Shita Rabbi Menachem Medaktik Moed. He was very careful. Lahavi Melech HaShulchan, to have salt on the table. Kedisa Medrash, because the Medrash says Kishra Yisrael Yoishvin Al Shulchan, when the Jewish people are sitting at their tables. Umamtinen Zeh Ezeh Ad Shitlenu Yedehem V'hei B'loi Mitzvahs. So he says that they're sitting there from the time of the Netilas Yadayim, and they're waiting for everybody to get to the table to eat. You hear this? You won't believe it. You hear Gershon, Mamash HaChiddush. He says they're just sitting there, they're idling. They're not doing anything. They're not allowed to talk. Right? They're not doing anything. So it ends up being that what? Hasatim Mekatreg. Something says these Jews are just sitting there, not doing anything. So, bris melech megan aleim. So when they have melech on the table, the salt, the bris melech, the Rebbe Shalom remembers the bris that he made with the salt. Maybe he conjures up about Ashes Loit, another white Mrs. Lot. And maybe he's thinking about the original bris melech from my separations from the covenant. He says, but that's why it's important to have salt. It protects the people. I was thinking about this. It was a very scary thought. Because if there's chas v'shalom mekitrig, when you're sitting at the table waiting, when you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, but you don't have any mitzvahs going on, then what about throughout the day? When people are just mamish idling and loitering and wasting, killing time. Rav Pamzatzal was so, he used to talk, mamish, it was his pet peeve, if I could say that, if it's not disrespectful, it was his pet peeve. He speaks all the time, he says, time, he says, a yiddish has to be mekadesh time. Time is such a commodity. Time is so precious. Time is so holy. He says, the first mitzvah we got, and as Klal Yisrael, obviously we got other mitzvahs, but the first mitzvah we got, Chodesh Zolachem, was all about time. So imagine if the Satan could be mekatrig on us for sitting at the table. Imagine the stamazoi, whatever we're doing. So you have to be careful to always be involved in mitzvahs. Always work on doing mitzvahs. Whatever, any moment you have, where you could think about somebody, to mispal for somebody, you could do a chesed, give tzedakah, if you could do, whatever you could do. Now the emphasis is that there's other reasons. The Sheba'al Leket brings down that the reason why you have to have salt on the table, and the reason why it's our minhag to have salt on the table, even though Taisa says really mikra and you don't need it, is because shulchan daimel mizbeach, is because the table is akin to the altar. He says the same way on the shulchan in the mizbeach rather than the altar in the Beis Hamikdash. It says the Beferish pasuk says that it should be incessantly on it should never stop. You should always have salt on the mizbeach. Your table in your house represents the altar. Just don't bring any sacrifices. Don't sacrifice your spouse or your kids on the. That's not what it means. That's not what it means to have an altar. It means that you're shulchan, that you have to conduct yourself. The Mishnah Berurah says on this, is a famous Mishnah Berurah. He says it means that shulchan mizbeach means that you have to, every time you eat at the table, you're eating to serve the Rabban Shalom, to have the vitality, to have the strength, to be in service of God. That's what it means. It means that it's like you're eating a carbon. That's what he says. That's huge. But Shulchan Aruch Mizbeach also means that your table is used for Inyani Kedusha. So one of the examples the Rishonim bring down is that you write out checks. Tzedakah. You make a check, whether it's $100, $10,000, $5,000, whatever, $18, whatever you could afford. You write out checks at your table. That's what Shulchan Aruch Mizbeach. The other thing he says is that you have guests at your table. A lot of people think Hachnos Zarchim is that they invite their neighbor and they live on, let's say, East 24th Street and K&L or L&L. I don't want to Chashom if anybody's watching Torah time. I'm not picking on any block. I don't know anybody. Say, but they think that, so we're having our friends over. That's not Hachnos Zarchim. You get no brownie points. No brownie points at all. Hachnos Zarchim means that you may not want the person over, but the person needs a meal. Or you want to be Makar of the person. That's Hachnos Zarchim. So that's Shulchan Aruch Mizbeach. The Rishonim say this. Now, I'm not making this up because I'm telling you to do Kiruv. The Rishonim say this. Or tzedakah at your table. That's Shulchan Aruch Mizbeach. Rav Pamzatzal, my Rabbi Rav Pamzatzal used to say that where the town that he came from in Russia, people used to talk about that they used to be buried with their tables. They used to take the table, they used to dismember the table, take it apart, and that was the urn. That was the coffin that they used. Yeah. So the Shulchan becomes their mizbeach. That becomes their kapara. That becomes their atonement. They're buried with a table that they did mitzvahs on. Imagine so a table that people speak in Lashon Hara at the Shabbos table, Chas V'Shalom. They're speaking about, the Super Bowl. Or they're speaking about, De Blasio, or Bernie Sanders. These people. That's what you want to be buried with. You don't want to be buried with that. So that's the Shibboleth Lekar Shulchan Aruch Mizbeach. Just because the Magen Avraham says you should machmir to, a lot of people don't do this, but Magen Avraham says you should be machmir to dip the bread in the salt 3 times. It's al pi Kabbalah. We don't know why, but it's something Kabbalistic. There are many, many reasons offered why we push it, and the Rishonim say this, is that the salt is a preservation, it preserves. And that's why sugar could be a substitute, according to Achronim, because sugar could also preserve. But you have to understand, salt is Na, the sodium, and the Cl is the chloride. Right? They're both opposing elements, right? One is what? What is chlorine? A gas, no. What's sodium? They're opposing elements. They never could get together naturally. The Baruch Shalom fuses them together. It makes a product that doesn't fight, that isn't diametrically opposed, antithetical. Rather, it preserves. That's nice. It's a chiddush. That it preserves. The salt is a preservative.
It's used for kosher too.
It's used for kosher, because that's part of the mitzvahs of it. So the idea of salt on the table is that even if you're having a shalom bayis problem, all right, there's a machlokas going on in the house, no, you have the salt. The salt reminds you, because most fights take place over at the table. When people get together, whatever. They have the salt, that's the melech. That's the reason why you have the melech. Yeah? Okay, so it's just a chazer. So Toys Shita was that you don't need melech b'chlal today. He says, but he brings down the Shita of Menachem that you don't want to contradict him. Better to have that the melech is making. It's brought down based on that Rizal, that melech is the same oisius as lechem, and therefore if you want lechem, you have to have, because lamed ches mem is bread, and mem lamed ches is melech. So if you want bread, then the portal, the gateway to having the bread is through the melech. L'chayra, it means that if you have melech is preservation, it preserves. Shalom, if you have shalom, hasam gevulech shalom, chelech chitim yaspich. If you want the chelech chitim, you want to be satiated with chelech chitim, you should have shalom. And that's the idea. Okay, let's go a little weiter. And with this, I see everybody's very tired. So we'll conclude with this. Okay, the weiter. So by the Gemara says further, around 5 lines from the top. A person is not allowed to eat if he has an animal in the house. Now I know most from Yidden, people don't have too many pets in the house. But a Mologat site, if you think about it, when they had more agrarian type of society and they had farms and everything, they probably did have pets. They probably had dogs and cats. And I'll give you a proof for B'Yaakov Emden, the Shelis Yaibitz. I think it's the Chelik Aleph Simin Yud Zayin. Fascinating tshuva. Sociologically, it's a very, very interesting tshuva historically, where he speaks about cats and dogs. Because he says, okay, so you have a chiyuv that you're not allowed to eat before you give your behemoth to eat. And it's based on a pasuk in V'hayim Shemaya. We say it every day, V'hayim Shemaya. At least twice a day, V'hayim Shemaya. It says, V'nasati Esav b'sadcha, you should put what? That Rabban Shem says, I will give you vegetation, grass in your fields. V'nasati Esav b'sadcha l'mtecha. Then it says, V'chal t'sota. So first it says that Rabban Shem says, I'll feed the animals, and then you'll eat and you'll be satiated. So you see from here, that the proper scheme, the proper structure, the proper chronology, the order is at first the animals have to eat and then you eat. And therefore, to cause any deprivation to animal. Sar Bali Chaim is Dorais according to many Rishonim. So you have to make sure to feed your animals. You're not allowed to eat before you feed the animals. Okay, what about drinking? What about drink? So that's a big machlokes Rishonim, by the way. Many Rishonim hold that drinking is the exception. They're allowed to drink before you give the animals to drink. Masha ain't eating. Why? Why should it be different? The Malay Omer says, "Lefi shishtias adam ma'at ubehema shoysa harbe v'yitircha gedola." You hear this? He says, humans, we drink a cup of water, but animals, you have to mamish be a orangutan in it. It's a whole malacha. He says it's like you really, it's a whole task to give an animal to drink, and therefore you could drink quickly, mashaking the animals, so therefore you don't have to suffer. Now that's Malayamer.
Because the animals drink a lot more than human beings.
Right, so that's what he's saying. Exactly. Very good. Yeah. He's bachila, achilas adam sricha chana v'tikun gadol. He says a person doesn't eat like an animal. So for a person to eat, it entails a whole preparation. You know, especially today, we're so gastronomically, and this whole society, everything's. You see these Jewish publications. It became like mamish. We're so. I mean, these advertisements. You know, we're like gluttons. Like like the whole such gashmias. And these recipes, and they have all these now cookbooks and magazines just dedicated to. Okay, listen, is that what we're here for? I don't know, but he says that mashenke behema. He says behema. It's fast food. He says, but a person, that's I don't know, Lamare. I don't know what the fancy was. What's these fancy restaurants these days? Whatever it is, He says, therefore, food you have to give the animal because it's a quick fix. It's a quick job. But the person's a whole thing. That's what the Malay Yomer says. The Har Tzvi, Reb Tzvi Pesach Frank, fascinating Chiddush. What he says, Har Tzvi always is very mechudesh. The Rav of Yerushalayim, the great Rav of Yerushalayim. My Rebbe Rav Kahana Zatzal was a big chassid of his. Was a big talmid of Har Tzvi. So he says that what?
Literally, or in his farm?
So he also had a shaykhs, yeah. He says that. So he says that maybe the Har Tzvi also wrote the Mikroi Kodesh on halachas as well. He says that tzama kosher mitzar achila. He says that chashom, dehydration, is worse than starvation. He says therefore, as much as we're going to have compassion and mercy on the animals. He says, but if a person Hashem is dehydrated, then they could really die. We have a pump in us. We have a sodium-potassium pump. And if a person Hashem suffers dehydration, then it could be a sakana for the person. It could cause
You need the energy to feed the animals.
Okay, it's interesting. So they don't say that, but I'm sure other Achronim, point that out. He says that oid. Now another reason the Har Tzvi says is they're afraid that if you start feeding the animal, if you start eating yourself, that you become more, I guess it becomes more of a process when you're eating. So therefore, when you're eating, yeshlochash yimshach v'yishkach me'behema. Mashenking drinking, you're not going to, your attention won't be distracted so much. As I state, that's what he says. Okay, the interesting is that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, and there's another sheet as well. I think it's the Ksav Sofer, not the Chassam Sofer. I think it's the Ksav Sofer. They both say a big chiddush that the same halacha applies about drinking. You're not allowed to drink before your animal. Now, the Gemara I think it's from the Gemara. The Rishonim say that the raya that you're allowed to drink before your animal is from Rivka. When she gave Eliezer, she said, drink and then your camels will drink. And also when Moshe Rabbeinu was feeding the people, he said, drink and then the animals will drink. So the Orach Chaim says it's not a raya. He's docha the raya. But he says why? It's because in those cases by Eliezer was mamish fatigued and famished and dehydrated. He was coming from a big journey, and the people were complaining. They needed desperately. His but stamazoi. If a person is not dehydrated, then you have to give the animal to drink first. The same way you have to give the food. So it's machlokes. I think we paskin that you're allowed to drink before you give the animal to drink. Now there's other shalos about Sudas Mitzvah. There are some Rishonim that paskin that if you're having a Sudas Mitzvah, like a Shabbos meal, then b'chlal, you don't have to give your animal to eat first. Rabbi Yaakov Emden's chiddush is that he says, how do you know it applies by a chaya? The pasuk says, "V'sati eitz b'satalim techa." It doesn't say b'chaya. A behemoth is a domesticated animal. Chaya is a non-domesticated animal. All right. So by the way, there's another machlokes Rishonim whether it applies behemoth l'chayra is behemoth tahira. Whether it applies for tmeya. So some Rishonim want to be medayik that Rivka with Eliezer was camels. Camels aren't kosher. So you see a raya l'chayra that it's even treif animals, not kosher animals. But what about chayas? L'chayra is another raya. The camel is a chaya. No, it's a behemoth. Maybe it's a behemoth shein tmeya. It's not a chaya. So does it apply to chayas? So Rabbi Yaakov Emden Tainas, he claims that there will be no difference between a behemoth and a chaya. And he says, but maybe he says, it only applies to animals that service you, that help you. He says, Mashake, an animal that doesn't help you, that's just a pet. He says, so what's a dog or cat do for you? So he gives an example. He says, the cat chases away the mice. He says the dogs bark to scare away intruders and trespassers. What?
Seeing eye dog.
Right, but he's not talking, right, I don't know if they had that back then, he's talking about his time. He says the dogs, steered away these trespassers and intruders. He says, for the little thing that they do, that they could bark, he says they should be rewarded. That you have, before you eat, you should feed them. That's what he says. Very, very interesting.
What happens, let's say a person's in the desert, they won't have enough water either to feed the animal or themselves. So
no, but if it's a kind for him, then he has to give it to the animal. He has to give it to himself. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, but now the shaila about having a behemoth tmei in the house. What?
We're not liberal.
Yeah, chas v'shalom. Yeah. But I'm saying, as far as having a behemoth tmei in the house, like a dog in the house, al pi Kabbalah, it's brought down not to have any behemoth tmei in the house, and not to make brachas.
You consider behemoth?
Chaya tmei. Yeah, but I'm saying not to make brachas either. I mean, ikra din, there's nothing wrong as long as the animal, as long as the dog is not dirty from feces, whatever it is, then you're allowed to make a bracha mikra din. You're allowed to make a bracha in front of the dog, but there are those that are nizher al pi Kabbalah not to make a bracha because it's considered like the satan is there, and not to make and not to have it in the house because it's not simon bracha. But for stamazoi, if a person doesn't need it, it's better not to have it. If a person needs it for therapeutic purposes, a lot of yidden, they need it either for therapeutic purposes. I know Nebuch, let's say, grushes and almanas, widows and divorcees, that's the only way they survive. They have the companion. They have, they need it desperately. Like you said, the seeing eye dog, right? That's another reason, even for, let's say, some people have it for protection. I'll never forget, I once saw this guy had a sign. He wrote, pit bull with AIDS. Stay away. I saw another sign, a mechanic shop. We used to be on near Tarvadas on Katalia and Coney. He says, this Doberman, its tongue has been removed. It's a silent killer. Gosh, don't start up. Okay, so listen, if a person needs it for protection, but stammers to have a dog, it's a little of a shiloh, but again, there's plenty of heterim, to have it. Okay, so. So see. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we accomplished, and Bez Hashem Yisparach, I just encourage everybody to go through these sugyas. There's so many different shalas about hilchos brachas, about vegetable soups and fruit soups and mizonos and amotzi, all the classic prototypes. What has to do with our eating and the manifestation of halachas, all predicated upon these dafim. So please, on your own, do some homework and do your due diligence, do your research, and try to learn it. You can master a lot of halachas. Okay, Yashikach, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you.